For those of you who haven't been here before, all of our students' projects are service learning projects. Most of them are for WCTC, but we do have one group this semester that did a project for an external company as well. So our lineup for this evening, we're going to start with our two health IT projects and then round out the health end with the VMP group, which is for another healthcare company. We'll take a brief intermission and then we'll go to our VehicleVault group and our SLED groups. With that, I'm going to stop my share and I'm going to let our HIT software team take it away.
Okay, give me just 1 second to get everything lined up here. I'm not 100% certain that I shared the right screen. Let me take one more shot at that.
Yep, you're right.
Okay, thank you. Good evening, everybody. I'm Kathy Bauer, and with my teammates Brandon Cottrell and Samuel Hooper, we will present the WCTC Electronic Health System Project for Spring 2024. Our agenda for this presentation is to do the introduction to the team and then the application. We'll discuss the purpose of our work and the challenges and learnings we had along the way. And then we will do a short application demonstration followed by any questions. So introduction to the team. As I said, I'm Kathy Bauer. For this project, I was the Scrum Master, which means that I help the team stay within the boundaries of the Agile project management framework. I also facilitated meetings and coordinated the contact between our product owner and the team itself. I'm also a web and software development student.
My name is Brandon Cottrell. I'm also a web and software development student, and I'm set to graduate here in May.
My name is Samuel Hooper. I am a web and software development student, and I'll be graduating this spring. Our wonderful product owner is Angela Lee. She's the program director at WCTC for Health and Information Technology, as well as a medical coding specialist.
And now the introduction to the application. What you see is the home page, and students in the WCTC Health Information Technology or HIT Associate Degree Program and students in the Medical Coding Specialist Technical Diploma Program need exposure and practical experience with the electronic tools which are typical of those used in industry. Unfortunately, commercially available packages such as Epic have prohibitively expensive licensing fees and maintenance fees. So Angela Lee initiated the request to the WCTC IT department to build an application to serve the students' needs, with a goal of adding functionality in subsequent semesters. The application provides a variety of actions and experiences related to documenting patient care. What you see here is a simple patient list where the user can search for any patient who is in the system. Once they find a patient, they have access to the patient details, which includes their name and all kinds of details relevant to their visit. In addition, we have encounters. Every time a patient comes to a facility, it creates an encounter, and all the healthcare they receive for that visit until they are discharged is recorded within this encounter. Along with that, they have a patient medications list. They can add and view medications for as long as the person is a patient. So even after a medication is no longer taken, it still stays on their list. And similarly with alerts, they can add and edit any alerts for the patient. And lastly, the nursing students can do the patient care assessments. The whole time that you are in the facility, they will routinely do various assessments, which at the very basic will include your temperature, respiration, and blood pressure. So the overall value of the application is, of course, it saves money for WCTC by eliminating the expensive fees for licensing and maintenance. It also provides exposure and experience to electronic health record systems for the healthcare students. And it provides practical experience for our software development students in providing results for a customer, working within an agile program management framework, developing code within a team and minding our version control, and working on a legacy application where we might be debugging, we might modify existing code, create new code, and do form validation, both server side and client side. The purpose of our work, the previous work delivered basic functionality, but did have a variety of issues. So our product owner created and prioritized the product backlog and set the items to address for this semester, which included the patient add edit was not saving correctly. The patient medication list had issues, as did the patient alerts for allergies. Within the administration section, the medication structure data needed updates, and the physician forms and reports had a variety of issues, including not saving correctly, an incorrect format, and some structural issues behind the scenes. For challenges and learnings, my favorite part was really just there was such a variety of tasks, and yet within those tasks, there were ample repetitions. In previous classes, we often saw something and then did it. But for me, I need to do it and then do it and then do it, and then I have it. So we had a variety of things to do, but within those things, I did have those repetitions that really helped me learn. It was also very helpful to review how others had solved similar issues in a large application. You'll see similar things across different areas, whether you're actually working that area or not. And so I had the opportunity to learn from what others had done before me. And in reality, the entire experience felt like a new graduate's first job. I had a list of tasks, I worked those tasks. If I got stuck, I asked for help, finished that task, and then did more tasks. And the whole time I was basically writing code every day or researching code every day. The primary things I learned, it really strengthened my understanding of the MVC or model view controller architecture. The model view controller is a design pattern that basically is one way that we manage data we get the data from the user over to the server, we do stuff to it, bring it back, and so the user can see it. Previous classes, again, we worked with it, but there were some gaps in my understanding. And in this project, I was able to work in it every day and feel like I really have a sound understanding of that architecture. At the same time, it also strengthened my confidence in handling version control. I was able to merge my work with that of my teammates multiple times throughout the semester and didn't overwrite anyone else's work. The hardest part for me was understanding and implementing data validation. Data validation is, for example, if you're creating a password, it might prompt you that it needs to be at least 8 characters, and 2 of those need to be a special character, and you have to have 2 numbers. That preface is part of the data validation, but then there's code behind the scenes that's making sure you're actually following that and won't let you proceed until you meet those requirements. So that's one type of data validation. There are multiple types, and I feel like I have a much better understanding of data validation than I did when I started.
My favorite part about working on this application was probably polishing up and fixing up the old code that I found in the system. I liked going through, finding things that didn't work quite how they were supposed to, or weren't quite built the way they should be, and fixing it up and getting it working and up to standard. And I also really just enjoyed creating a useful product and getting some back and forth with Angela and hearing her excitement for it. And just knowing that I was making something that wasn't just going to be discarded at the end of the semester. It was something that was actually getting used. I learned a lot about handling version control. It's something that we had very briefly messed with in previous classes, but now I really feel a lot more comfortable with syncing my code with my teammates and just managing different version states as I'm working through an application lifecycle. And I also learned a lot about working within an existing application. Things like following standards, that when you go from web page to web page, it looks the same, and just not breaking things that are already there, and kind of working around the code that other people wrote while making a coherent website that flows. And the hardest part for me was keeping scope manageable. Especially when we first started, I was just jumping into it and I'd be like, oh, that needs to be fixed, that needs to be changed. And I'd find an issue with just about everywhere. There was something that I wanted to change, and suddenly I was trying to change the whole website. And it took me a little bit to get used to, okay, that's just going to have to, it's going to have to be bad, and that's going to have to be fixed by somebody else at a later date. And it was also hard to implement good user validation, just making sure, kind of like what Kathy was talking about, just making sure that when the user goes to fill out a form, that we're letting them know what they need, and we're taking them, especially some of the forms are very long. And so it was like taking you to where you messed up, instead of just saying, oh, you can't submit the form, now find the field that you didn't fill out right.
And as for my favorite part of the project, was working on a project that actually simulated what a professional work environment would be like. Kind of gave me a better idea of what a job in the web and software development field might look like on a day-to-day. Also seeing the progress throughout the semester. So seeing from where it was to where it is now, and knowing all the time and effort and bouncing our heads off the desk and everything with it, it makes me really proud of all the work that we were able to get accomplished through that. As far as what I learned, how to work better with the views and the controllers, kind of like Kathy was saying with the MVC. Just seeing how everything worked together and actually doing it and working with it every day. I know for a lot of the forms I was using some of the partials, and it just kind of broke everything up and gave me a better understanding of that. Also working with some of the agile methods. So we would have our 2-week sprints. We'd go through the backlog, kind of see what work needed to be done for that 2 weeks, do our work, come together, test everything, make sure everything worked properly. And then after those 2 weeks, go through our retrospectives, kind of see what worked well, what we needed to change for the next sprint. It's just is the first time that I've ever worked with a group with that, and I enjoyed that. Some of the hardest things for me personally were fixing one issue that would lead to another one. I know one of the files I was working on had over 2,500 lines of code on it, and it can be a little daunting and frustrating sometimes when you fix one thing and all of a sudden you have to dive through that whole file just to figure out what the issue is. And then working with hundreds of files throughout there. It's a really big project, and we only scratched the surface on a couple of the parts we were working on. But I know when we initially started with this project, I feel like it took me 10 minutes to almost find out how to change one little thing throughout that. As for what I was working on for a majority of the project was the add and edit patient forms. As we previously said, there couldn't really add or edit patients before, it'd throw an error, but this first page is how it looked before. There's a lot of fields. There's no real rhyme or reason to anything. Some of them have 3 fields. Some of them have 4, 2. It's also using tabs along the top. As I said, it wasn't really saving anything, even after you would hit the next page or save patient. After talking with Angela, decided that an accordion might be good for the form. I came up with a few different ideas of what we could do to maybe make it a little bit easier, give it a little bit more uniformity. All the fields there, all the rows only have 2 fields. There's a couple where there's 3, but most of the time it's just the 2. And you're now able to save a patient at the very minimum as a Jane Doe, where you just have a first and last name, but the fields in there where there's an address, a maiden name, any field in there is really going to save for the most part now. This is the patient details page. in the accordion, which follows some of the same look and layout of what the add and edit patients have. It's just a little bit of a cleaner look and kind of rolls down from the top, waterfalls to the bottom with everything. And this is kind of what you would see if everything was closed, where you start from the top, work your way down from demographics, contacts, employment, insurance, and kind of works you top to bottom as opposed to going through all the tabs along the top, not realizing you may have missed a field here or there.
The first main project that I worked on this semester was this medication list. This is the administration view for medications, where a website admin can go in and add new medications to the application. And as you can kind of tell from the scroll bar on the right side of this picture, the way it used to work was it would just give you about 1,700 records all at once, and you just had to scroll really far down if you wanted to find the one you were looking for. Whereas now it's in a nice, neat table. There's about 10 to 15 records in here, and the load time for this page is now about a second, whereas previously it was over 10. The second big thing that I worked on was the patient medication list. So this is where you actually take those medications and assign them to individual patients. This old table was just big. It had a lot of unnecessary data, like the exact time of your start date, and it didn't match a lot of other tables and buttons displayed throughout the rest of the site. The new table is much neater. There's full functionality now. The old table didn't have a way for you to actually delete, edit, view the details. This table comes with a sort, and all around is just much neater, and the back end is much cleaner, flows much better with the rest of the application.
And one of the things I worked on was the history and physical form. What you see here is how it was at the beginning of the semester, and it used these accordions, which is a really good technique for gathering and presenting data in little chunks. But the history and physical is really meant to be more of a report where you see everything in one page. So I realize this is a bit of an eye test, but you see everything there is displayed in that one page. And if we look a little bit more closely, you can see some of these fields, and some of the things that challenged me were some of the fields come from different areas of the application and across multiple tables in the database. For example, the admission date, the attending physician, and within the present illness, the field that says chief complaint. All of those come from different tables. So it was a good exercise for me to learn more about bringing those in and working with them without modifying them in this form. Form also has an area for the physician to record various history things about the patient. And then it has the two sections that are called review of systems and physical exam. Those two together are called a body system assessment. And there's actually quite a bit of things going on in the background with those. Just for the review of systems, there's actually 13 systems for the physician to potentially assess, and they will assess the ones that are relevant to the chief complaint. Those that they do assess, they can pick either that it's within normal limits or it's abnormal, and they must then provide a comment. And for the ones that they did an assessment and provided a comment, those are the ones that you see in the report. Any of them that stay as not assessed are not recorded. The physical exam works very similarly. It just has different categories than the review of systems. And after the physical exam, there's a section for the assessment and plan. And then the bottom of the form is all about authoring provider signatures. The one you see here is a provider who doesn't require co-signing. But if the provider was, say, a resident physician that did require a co-signer, a block very similar to the one you see there would show up on the right side and have a place for the actual physician to co-sign and with the date. And that pretty much wraps up the work I did on the history and physical. And it also finishes the application demonstration, which takes us to the last step of the presentation, which is our question and answer section. Any questions from the audience?
I'm going to jump in and ask Angela, since she is here, if she would be willing to speak a little bit about her experience with you guys as a team before we jump into the questions.
Hello, everyone. I just have to say this was one of the best teams I've worked with so far. We've had lots of great teams that we've worked with, and we've had semesters where we've made huge leaps and bounds, but this one was particularly wonderful to work with for me. Every other week, at a minimum, sometimes every week, I was getting new versions to test and play with, which was awesome because I'm used to seeing lots of demonstrations, but never getting my hands on the system. And so it was really very cool for me to do that. They were very responsive when I said, well, you know, I kind of like this better, or it should have done this too. And within days, they would have them fixed. So that's been really, really cool. I think the most exciting thing for me, and I've already told Nikki, is that I have a meeting with my faculty in June when I get back from Italy, and we are going to actually start loading patients into the live system so that our coding students can code from these electronic records. Two of the forms that we've been waiting for was the history and physical and the discharge summary, which is very much like the history and physical in terms of design. And it has every piece of data that we need in there. It functions. And just the fact that I can create a patient and actually save it was a huge leap for us as well, because we've had some trouble with that in the past. So we couldn't use it because we couldn't create any new patients in our new system. So I'm really, really excited to be able to use this in fall. So, and I'm really curious. I saw Drew is on, so I'm very curious to see what he has to say, because he was with us at the very beginning when this project became a brainchild of ours. So.
No, that Angela, that's absolutely spot on. This is really great work. I'm remembering the initiation of Brit Systems 7 or 8 years ago. And so it's really cool to hear you guys see the value in working on an experience that is brownfield, where you're feeling the pain of what on earth was someone thinking when they did this? And how does that work? So it's great to hear that that's valuable, because as someone now back in industry, I don't do a whole lot of file new project. I do a whole lot of git clone. How do I make this work? How do I do the thing? So it sounds like it's setting you guys up for really great opportunities to apply your learnings in unique ways. So on to the fun questions. You guys up for it?
Sure.
So I've got a couple practical questions and then a vision question for you. Do you want them all at once, or do you want them in chunks?
One at a time.
One at a time. All right. So one of the things I heard is there is 100 files, and the files, I will tell you very straight up, 2,500 lines is not okay. So how did you guys think about refactoring, and what kind of test coverage is there? Are there unit tests and integration tests or any of those things to help future groups know what's working and what's not with confidence, as opposed to, it sounds like, your experience?
You want to start, Brandon?
Yeah, I guess there wasn't too much thought into that, honestly. I think a lot of times when I was working on it, it was kind of just figure out what the issue was and kind of move on. And as long as it kind of worked at that point, I was fine with that. So I didn't put too much thought, I guess, into any of that. But yeah, it was kind of a bear. I know there was right in the beginning, Nikki and I spent 2 or 3 hours or something trying to find out the most minute thing in this controller, and it was just a bear through and throughout. So
yeah, we did as we went a little farther through several of the controller files, we were able to eliminate large blocks of code that had been commented out, and also adding quite a bit of comments so that it was a little bit more clear and understandable what each method was doing or each action was doing.
Right.
When I did the physician history and physical, that particular form had an underlying architecture that was completely different than anything else in the application. And it now has been refactored, so it is more similar. So it won't hopefully be quite so much of a headbanger for the next student that comes along and goes, what are they doing?
Right. Yeah, comments are a really great way to share context. Unit tests and integration tests are a functional way for
Yes.
people to verify that context. So as I'm thinking back, I don't think I ever taught the idea of unit testing. So there's an opportunity maybe for additional coursework. I know my team actually pushes me really hard to let them write more tests than I want them to, because testing can also be a black hole of time.
Yes.
The next question I have, and this might be kind of where the next group goes as far as some of the performance stuff, but it looks like you're using MVC for like every page load loads from the server layer. I didn't know if you were using any JavaScript or any of the front end frameworks that exist and that I know are covered in various aspects to improve load time or the UI UX experiences. And then follow up with, and this might be the database query performance. When I hear 2,500 rows being returned to a web page in a single request, it makes me cry a little bit.
Yes, that functionality that was one of the first things I got rid of. Was I looked at that huge request and I said no. And I think I asked Nikki about how to go about processing that. And so the way that table works right now is it shows you 15 lines and that's all it's querying from the database. You're only getting those 15 lines. We don't use like a JavaScript framework front end. Like there's no like Vue or React or Angular or anything. It's just the ASP.NET front end with the Razor pages.
I thought that's what it was, but I didn't know if it had changed over time.
This is Angela again. I wanted to mention one other thing with regards to that medication list. That medication list is a pivotal piece for so many other sections. So to have that working now is going to make a huge difference in future build, because it affects the alerts, it affects the discharge summary, the history and physical. When we get to the point of doing orders, that was a critical piece as well. So even though it doesn't look like it's something that's massive because of the fact that it's in the administrator side, it's tied to a lot of stuff. So yeah, it made huge difference.
And then my last question, and before I ask it, first off, I'm really excited that y'all are impacting students outside of the program and that it's working in multiple disciplines in multiple areas. That's really, really cool. And a really cool pattern. So the last question I have for the three of you, and I'd love to know, is what do you think the most important thing for the next group will be?
Update to .NET 8. I know that was one of the things right at the end. It's kind of jokey, but it's serious. I know that Nikki had kind of mentioned it right at the end that like if it's not too difficult, try and take a look at it. And I think just getting that updated is probably going to be the best thing that I would say for them. But just taking the time, I would say to go through the actual program and just figure out how everything works, because it is a lot. It's overwhelming, especially when you first jump into it. So I would say realistically, take your time, slow down, ask questions. I know questions are a huge thing with that. But yeah, for me.
I would say that whatever needs to come next, and in all honesty, Angela was a really great product owner because she gave us a really good product backlog. And I think whatever is on that product backlog that can get this into the hands of the students as soon as possible, I think that's what the next group really needs to be prepared for and really dig into and deliver it.
We have time for one last question, maybe somebody other than Drew, though I appreciate his questions. Anybody have anything for this team before we go to the next one? Awesome. Well,
All right.
thank you, team.
Yes,
Thank
thank
you.
you all, and a special thank you to Nikki and Patrick for all their help this semester, and again for Angela for being the best possible product owner.
It's been a real pleasure. Thank you, guys.
All right. HIT data team, you are up next.
Okay. Share my screen.
Christina, it's really hard to hear you.
Okay, let me speak up. Is that better now? Okay. Okay, good evening, everybody. My name is Christina Kelm, and I am a student at WCTC, and my team and I worked on the Health Information and Technology Data Modeling Project. It's an extension a little bit of what we just heard on the other students' project. To introduce our team, the HIT Data Modeling Project also had Angela Lee. She was our product owner as well. She is again the HIT instructor and program coordinator at WCTC. Myself, I was Christina Kelm. I was the Scrum Master on this project. And I'll let my team member introduce herself. Go ahead, Summer.
I'm Summer Schneider. I'm an IT data and analytics specialist student at WCTC, and we both worked on the data modeling and database design in this project.
So the reason why we wanted to work, were asked to work on this project was our product owner, Angela Lee, she needed the database that the WCTC Health HIT students are working on to be extended and add a few more features that didn't exist in today's environment. One of those additions was a tabling system to add medical record retrieval system. They have a current software product that they're utilizing called Clintegrity 360 that is going to be replaced fairly shortly. So it was very important to Angela that we have something in place on the database to replace that system. Another feature that they wanted to have on the WCTC Health System database was the incorporation of the birth registry system to replace the current paper form that they're using today and make all of these systems integrated in the WCTC Health System database. No more utilizing different systems, no more trying to pull paper forms and look for things. So it's all in a one-stop shop place. So the problem that we solved was Clintegrity 360's website is going to be sunsetted in the future. That is the system that the HIT students are utilizing to pull their medical records from. We're going to fulfill the requirement to provide these medical records upon request. And we are going to supply the disclosure statement so that should the HIT data students need to provide this information for medical record auditing, they can easily pull that up right off the database. So the first part that we had to do is we had to model this data. And for those of you that are not aware, when you create these applications and you kind of outline your data requirements, which Angela did a fantastic job providing to Summer and I, the information that she needed to have contained within these new extensions to the database. The next step would be to kind of picture these relationships that these data elements are going to have in the new database or in the existing database and build tables on that. So that's what we mean by data modeling. We take those data requirements, we put it at a high level, then we integrate it down to an even more granular level, and then we create the database for it. So we are doing that for the medical record retrieval and for the existing birth record form that needs to be stored on the database. And all of it's going to be on the WCTC Health System database. So this is an example of the current Clintegrity 360 database that the HIT students are utilizing. You know, it's lived its life. It's a little bit dated looking. There's a lot of white space on this screen. some of the headers don't make sense, I think, in a modern medical terminology. But it's lived its life and it did what it needed to do. But it really wasn't able to produce that statement that Angela really wanted to have. So our job was to make something that could be capable of doing that. Here is an example of the birth record form. It's an 8-page form. It collects pregnancy and birth information on the mother and the infant. And again, right now it's not really stored anywhere. So if you need to find this data at a quick pace, you're probably running to a file cabinet and grabbing that information out of there and trying to find it. And somebody might have misfiled it and all of these things that could happen. Now it's going to be on the database and it'll be easy to retrieve it. So the software students touched upon this as well, but to reiterate it, this new database that they're working on and enhancing, it's going to allow the medical students to mimic using this real world medical database for a fraction of the cost. And it's going to provide them with experience and some of the technical knowledge on how to navigate these systems that can be used in their future medical careers. And it gives the WC instructors a tool to better educate their students regarding the systems that they're going to come across in their future careers. And this is a picture of the login page, how it looks now. But we're further enhancing it to add some more of these new features that Summer and I modeled. So some of the software that Summer and I used when we were collaborating on this project was Microsoft Teams. That was what we used to collaborate with. We would meet with Angela on it. We would meet every Tuesday night. Lucidchart, that is the software that we use to create the models so that you can have a visual picture of what the database is going to look like and how these things all tie in together. We use Microsoft Excel to create for Angela some test data spreadsheets so that she can see all of the fields that are on these data tables and you know, figure out how it joins to what that's already existing on the database. We use SQL Server Management Studio in order to go into the data, build the tables, create the tables, add the test data to it. And then finally, we also use Balsamiq wireframes because we had to create screen mockups of what we think these portions of the database are going to look like, these GUI screens will look like when the software students develop it next summer or fall. So I'm going to let Summer talk about some of the challenges and things that we enjoyed learning about the project. So go ahead, Summer.
One of the challenges that we faced this semester was the lack of medical knowledge. We both didn't really know much about the medical terminology, medical procedures, and medical field practices. So if we would have known a little more and had more background on it, it might have gone a little smoother and we wouldn't have had to ask so many questions and look things up. Another challenge that we faced was learning how to use the Balsamiq wireframes application to design screen layouts because it was something that we had never done before. Something that we learned this semester was how to work with a product owner and build data models based on the documentation that she gave us. We were able to take what we learned from our previous classes and apply it to this project. We also learned how to generate test data to validate relationships in the new database. And we learned how to effectively document database information for the outside customers. So future software development students will be able to look at the documentation that we created and have a better idea of how we built the database and how they can implement that into the future or into the website that they'll expand the current website with. And then we also learned how to use the Balsamiq wireframes application. Some of the hardest parts of the project, the hardest part of the project was looking at all the information at the beginning and just going through it and trying to figure out where to begin and how to start building the databases. And then another hard part about the project was creating the screen layout mockups, because that was something that we never learned how to do as data students. Our favorite parts of the project were making the lucid chart data models, because it helped us really visualize what we were creating. Christina really liked creating the test data and checking the relationships between all the tables in the database. And I really enjoyed documenting the whole process because I liked having all the information organized. And then we also both liked designing the screen layout mockups because it helped us be more creative and really visualize like what the future website would look like with the database that we created.
So speaking of our screen layouts, it's just kind of interesting because both of us kind of took a portion of the medical record retrieval system that Angela really needed to have right away. And Summer took some of it and I took some of it. And it's just interesting how two people have been working together kind of came up with different visualizations of how it looked, but we thought that was great. So we kept it on just how we both created it. And so when you get into the new landing page, my visualization was that you were just going to have these two new, boxes that you could check on. One would be for the medical record retrievals, and the next would be for the birth registry. All of these tables have already been added into the WCTC health system database already. Once you clicked on the medical record retrieval, you can search via 3 different ways. You can go in through your requests, requesters, and the disclosures. And that's mainly because in Clintegrity 360, that seemed like the most common ways that students were requesting these records by one of these 3 ways. So if you were going to go in by your requester, you could go into a screen that looks similar to this. You could click on who it was. Perhaps you wanted to go by company, so you could put in the company name, and there would be a drop down or something of that nature that you could do to look for it different ways. There would be a link that you could click on if you found the one that you were searching for. For the requester, I kind of wanted to keep this screen clean because there's a lot of information on it. And it would just give you their information, whether they have a contact, like a secretary of something of that nature. Any comments that were made by the person entering the information in, their contact information, status of it. And had you decided to go in by the disclosure, it's set up very similar. Perhaps you're looking for a disclosure for a particular patient MRN, maybe a patient name. These are all things that you could kind of move around on this page and decide upon, depending on what you're looking at. Perhaps you're looking at for a specific facility. And then this screen would be quite a bit longer. I just didn't have enough room to put the whole thing in to where you could see it, or at least where I could see it. But the disclosure details would be a fairly substantial screen that you would have to scroll down. It would have who the patient was, the items would have been underneath here, and then the further information would have been, the student or the employee who entered the information in. All of that would have been stored on here, and then there'll be a icon that you could click to export to Excel or to a PDF document, should you need to send it off someplace. So those were my screens, and I'll let Summer talk about the ones that she created.
So I did my screen layouts a little differently than Christina. I focused more on like just making sure all the data was in there and that everything was organized rather than the details, because she focused more on like the details of the overall website. So this would be the page that would list all of the requests. It could be sorted by all the various fields, and you would be able to look up whichever request that you needed to find. This would be the page where someone could go in to enter a new request or edit an existing request. This would be the page where someone could add requested items to an existing request. or edit the requested items on a specific request. And this would be the page where someone could edit a patient representative or add a new patient representative to a certain request.
So that was the extent of what we did, Summer and I, so we just wanted to know if anybody had any questions.
And again, I'm going to jump in and ask Angela if she'd be willing to share her experience working with this team this semester.
This was also, I have to say, another really great experience. So we were notified, oh gosh, at the beginning of the year that they were going to sunset the record disclosure module of ARC Integrity. And we went into panic mode. We're like, how are we going to teach the students how to track these disclosures and that sort of thing? And then this project fell in our lap. So I was really excited to work on it. And I had fun meeting with them every week, and I got to learn a little bit more about databases than I had previously been able to do. So it was really a lot of fun, and I really enjoy the screen mock-ups because that's something that I normally have to do myself, and I do it by doing copy and paste off of our regular site, and then I cover stuff up with boxes and add new boxes in and stuff like that. So it's kind of nice to have some inspiration going into the project. So we're hoping that this will be something that will be built out in fall by the programmers so that we only have one semester gap of not having a tool for the students to use. But yeah, it was a really fun project. The birth registry system was in need of a lot of work. And we had Nikki and I had talked about it previously, and we decided now's the time, since we have these database folks, to kind of revisit what was being collected in the format that it was being collected in, so that will also be a future add-on. And now with the new version, it will actually connect to the original, the big database in terms of patients. So we'll be able to bring in, when the mom comes in, we'll be able to bring in the mom's information into that birth certificate, as well as the baby's information. So, and I have to say that they were very responsive and quick to turn around things as well, which, like I said, was such a refreshing thing for me this semester. Everybody was just always right on the ball. But I had realized almost at the end of the project that there was an entire block of data that I forgot to share with them. And they graciously took my extra form and incorporated it right away into the system. So yeah, it was a very good experience. So.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to open it up to questions. Anybody have any questions for this group?
I have one. So, I know you're data folks, and so the whole, creating, the mock-ups and everything is really new and potentially completely outside of your comfort zone. So I understand from that perspective, each of you kind of going in your own direction and from a creativity perspective, but looking at it from an end user perspective, one of the things that we're looking for is sort of consistency, because then when people go from thing to thing, it's really familiar already, and they almost intuitively know where to go. So I guess my question is, why did you choose to kind of go in each of your own directions instead of trying to bring that into a piece? And again, I know that doing that was new.
No, it was new to us, and the reason why is that because neither one of us are experienced at this.
Yeah.
We wanted to basically display to the next group, the software students who are going to be building this. This way is a vision, this way is a vision. And they're both good models. But they have the experience probably to determine, well, which one would be better, whose would be more intuitive to the website. They could probably take what Summer had and make it the same colors and the same sort of layout as what's already existing inside these screens based upon what we saw with the software students working on it now. And I think that that's probably what's going to happen. But because, neither one of us are experts in this field, I've never even really thought about how that was ever done until we were told to make screen mockouts. And I suppose somebody has to do that. It just doesn't pop up that way. That we wanted to kind of show how, you know, when people are brainstorming these things, you can get very different results or very different, you know, layouts based upon what they did and how they interpret this information.
No, I think it's great. And I thought, especially for that not have it being anywhere near your experience, I thought you guys did a nice job, better than some applications we see out there on the web every day. So kudos to you on that. I just wanted to sort of get your thought process on it.
We thought about it. We were like, well, maybe we should just make it all look the same. And I'm like, I want to show that it came from two different people, that we both worked on two different screen sets, and then we'll let the experts next semester decide, oh, this is the way to go. Or Christina doesn't know what she's doing. Or someone needs to get this one down, or however they want to do it.
I think it's great that you guys did that though, because now you have that experience. So when you are working with the developers and kind of talking through things, you've got a good frame of reference. And so that gives you a nice advantage to be able to talk about it. That's one of those things you should be bringing up in your interviews.
Okay.
Yeah, we've done screen mock-ups. You know, I don't say I'm an expert at it, but I've been through the process, and you know, and that's something I think I can bring to the table as I work with developers, right? It's a great way to be able to, you know, take those opportunities that end up materializing for you and making the best of it. So nicely done.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I think I missed it. So did you guys actually make the database tables as well, or did you just kind of mock it up and that's going to be the next team's?
We did create the tables on the database.
Awesome.
They're on it in the development system. So once that data gets copied over into a test system, and then probably eventually in a production environment, all of those tables and data elements and are going to be stored on WCTC Health.
Perfect. Awesome.
With the screens y'all built, did that change how you model the data at all as you were going through that? Like, did it change how you thought about it, or was it kind of the data model drove what you built for the screens you recommended?
The data model was our key in creating these screen layouts. I kept glancing at that model for me because I'm more, I guess, visual, what you would say, instead of just looking at the tables all the time. In the SQL database, I looked at that data model that Summer and I had created and was using that to kind of say, oh, these are the things a requester is going to need. This is the kind of information that they're going to pull. This is going to be the drop down that you're going to have on there just by going from this to that to this. Summer, was that the same thing for you, or did you look lower?
Yeah, we built the screen mockups after we built the database. So it was all, the screen mockups were based on what we created for the database, not vice versa.
This is Angela again. I just wanted to make mention that the mockups that they did are actually very much in line with what we would probably be looking for to be built. So, you know, going back to the question of, you know, they're not experienced with this, but they really did have a good handle on what it was that I'm looking for in terms of the collection of the information and the flow. We talked a lot about the flow of collection. And so I think that it's going to be a really great starting point that can then be modeled into our current system styling and everything.
All right. Thank you, HIT Data Ladies.
Thank you.
VMP team, you are next. So our next group is a little bit different than we traditionally have had. Usually all of our service learning projects have been for WCTC, but we needed another data project. So we got a lead on the team for VMP group. So guys, take it away.
Hi. Oh, can you hear me?
Yep, all good, Sarah.
Oh, okay. You can hear me. Okay, good. Yeah, actually our project, we were pretty amazed at what Philip and Trayden came up with. It was, we did actually 2 projects. One of them was for our PBJ reporting. We have a lot of agency vendors and we get a PDF copy and we have a lot of data entry because they don't punch in and punch out like our regular employees do. So we do a lot of data entry for entering the hours to be reported with our hours of our regular employees. For the nursing home report, basically we report to the state the number hours for the CNAs and the LPNs and the different professions. But we were doing a lot of data entry and it was taking hours of work, and they created a program to read the PDFs and pull out the data, and they also added on doing the midnight splits. So we had where say somebody works 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. For the PBJ reporting, we have to have a cutoff at midnight. So the hours 10 p.m. to midnight go on one day, and then the hours from midnight to 7 a.m. go on to the next day. And they were able to program that in to separate that data. They also, for the PDFs that were not able to be read, or like say, they do a lump sum for the week of the hours. They created a way that we can manually enter into a spreadsheet, and it would upload the data and split everything out because we end up with a lot of third shift people. So it saves us a tremendous amount of time for the PBJ reporting. And the other project they worked on was more analytics, and that was for our central supply and analyzing our inventory loss and if the transactions are going in and out, which in numbers that make sense. They did find some highly skewed numbers that looks like that either they're walking off the floor or they're not being charged out, or something's happening. So areas that now we can hone in on and figure out what's going on with those specific supplies, because we had a lot of inventory loss every year and we were trying to figure out what was happening with that. So they reviewed 2 years worth of data and compiled it all into an easy to read format that we just didn't have time to do, which has saved us tons of hours again. So I know they spent a lot of time, and it was actually a lot of work that they did in the background. But we highly appreciate all the work they've done. It's amazing. We're thoroughly blown away.
Awesome. Thank you, Sarah.
Oh, you're welcome.
Gentlemen, you guys want to share your part in all of this?
Yeah, totally.
Sorry about that. Thank you, Sarah. You kind of took the words right out of our mouths. So. We're thoroughly pleased that you've had a great experience with us. We are the desk detectives, and we were in charge of the VMP Healthcare project. Sarah kind of filled you in on a lot of the details so far, so we'll just kind of try to recap a lot of the things. I am Philip Peterson, and I am graduating this spring from the Data and Analytics Specialist program. My partner.
Yep, I'm Trayden Larson. I'm also going into data and analytics and graduating this spring. So me and Philip graduating same time. It's real great.
And the one who kind of introduced everything for us, her name is Sarah Loing, and she is the account manager for VMP. VMP has been around for almost 100 years. They are a healthcare community living center and provide a full range of senior healthcare for the residents, the patients, and are actively involved in the community. They offer assisted and independent living for their seniors, and they strive to build a true sense of community for their residents. They're more than just a retirement home. They have multiple layers of support, tons of medical providers, and over 300 active volunteers. They believe that you're never too old to play, so their senior community club members get to take advantage of cultural outings, sporting events, learning classes, different kinds of clubs, fitness workshops. They even have a hair salon and a bank on site. So it is a truly amazing piece of the community. However, with those amenities comes a few problems. Like she had stated before, they outsource a lot of nursing staff and they submit all of their invoices through PDFs, and a lot of them are actually scanned because they include the time cards with them, as well as the inventory for all of the medical supplies that they keep on hand. There's such a high volume of turnaround in such a short amount of time that it's kind of difficult to keep track of things because of the way they carry over month to month, when you need them, how you use them. So there can be some fluctuations in the purchases. Things have changed over time, markups, going through COVID, prices skyrocket, prices plummet, and trying to adjust those things to make sure they're on point can be a little tricky to stay on top of. So they asked us to kind of dig in a little deeper, see if there's any anomalies that are sticking out, because when you look at it on the books, it's a little hard to tell that 1 month things are super high, 1 month things are super low. So are we on point to where we need to be, or is there something that we need to pay more attention to?
Yeah, and Sarah kind of covered a lot of the points I was going to mention here, but a big part of her job is filling out the invoices or how much they have to pay their nurses, because they get their nurses from multiple different vendors. A big problem they had was so many invoices, so much manual entry they had to take care of. So our solution going into this, or the problem with our solution, was how can we save them time? And our solution, and we'll get into that in a bit. Right now, Philip's going to discuss his part in with the inventory analysis.
So we were provided with 2 years of billing and restocking data to dig deeper into what's going on and to find all of those weird, quirky things and paint a better picture of what's really adding up here. And now remember, they've been around for almost 100 years. So there's a lot of things that have changed from month to month, day to day, year to year. We utilized SQL Server Management Studio, and it's a database software that allows you to run queries and do calculations. And with that, we were able to break down thousands of lines of billing codes, transactions, inventory items, and kind of hone in on those key elements that are just, they pop up on the books and they look weird, but do they actually make sense? Are things actually in order? And in the end, we did end up finding that there was a little bit of inventory that was out of sync with the way it was being tracked coming in and going out. There were a few markups that weren't up to date, and that was a result of different billing issues for different purposes. Some providers it's one, some it's another. If it's in-house, it could be one thing, and if it's just, it could be an item that's not tracked at all as well. In the end, we did end up only finding a slight few items, like she said, that the purchases were really, really high for the amount of use that they were actually going through. However, some of those items needed further investigation to find out is this something that expires? Is it something that needs to be kept on hand, and that's why you see such a large amount, or is it walking off the shelf? All of these were outputted into CSV audits so that they could analyze and go over them. There were some graphs and charts. Unfortunately, I cannot show some of those. I really would have liked to, but just because they are an outside vendor, and a lot of their systems were a little kind of confidential. So it was a little bit of a struggle just to get enough information for me to dig in. So to be able to show it all off, it's kind of like a little bit of privacy there.
Yeah, so getting into the other problem we were set to tackle in with VMP Healthcare was figuring out what to do with all their invoices. So like I mentioned before, a lot of Sarah's time was consumed by just manually entering all the PDFs that they got from their vendors. So our goal with this application was to find a way to shorten up that time as much as possible. It was able to do that in 2 ways. One of the options or modes that we have for it is it can actually scan a few of the PDFs that they get from vendors, which is awesome. So there's no amount of manually having to fill it out that they have to do. All they have to do is select the PDF, hit parse, and then it'll automatically scan it all into a Excel file. For example, right here. Another big issue that they had when manually entering in all the invoices was by requirement, they had to split the shifts that were overnight. So like if someone worked like 4 p.m. to like 2 a.m. the next day, they had to actually fill that out in as two separate like rows for one day and then for the other. The issue was all the invoices they received weren't split that way. So they always had to calculate it out manually and based on the hours and all that. And besides manual entry, having to do calculations too was also a big hassle. So the application we made tackles both of those problems. And then to fill in any cracks that could arise, we also added in a way for them to manually enter the data just to split the shifts. So some of the PDFs that we got weren't really readable using the software we used. So in order to make up for that, we made a template that they can fill out in Excel, and it'll automatically calculate a lot of the columns. All it needs is when they started their shift, when they left for their shift, if they had a lunchtime, and how much they make an hour. And it'll automatically calculate out every other column mentioned there. Yeah, that's all it. Let's get into a demo, shall we? I got all pulled up right here. Let me just take control. Awesome. So in the end, we were able to package up the application in a really nice folder here. So all you got to do is literally open the application. There's no fancy gimmicks to it. From here, we have a few select options. Right away, you see the create empty template. This is what I was talking about, where they can manually enter the data. In order to keep some of like the data consistent with the reading, we made a template for them, so they can easily save it wherever they need to, and then they'll create an Excel file here with like pre-rendered data essentially. So as long as the template is mostly followed in here, it'll work perfectly with the application. Some of it's not even required. Like I said before, all they really need is when they clocked in, when they clocked out, any lunchtime, and then how much they earned. Getting into the invoices, on the other hand, say, for example, this one right here. It's what we showed in our example. All we have to do is select where the vendor is from. In this case, this is from the FastPace, their vendor. So we select the vendor. We select the PDF. And then it'll take just a little bit to load in the system because it's scanning the images themselves and trying to decipher the text. So we got a nice loading bar right here. And then once it's done, it'll say file parsed. So we can save that file. And it'll save it as an Excel file, and it calculates out all the shifts. And then as you can see here, it also splits the shifts up, which is exactly what we want. Another cool feature of the program that we added was they can actually combine multiple of these PDFs, multiple of the invoices together into one file. So instead of even having to copy over all the information, all they got to do is parse out files a few times. So we'll run the same one back through. And then we'll actually do a manual entry this time. I had one pre-rendered for the demo, so It's just me and Philip here at WCTC. I left out some of the columns, like I said, that weren't necessary before. So just the in, out, lunch, and wages that we earned. So I can open that up real quick, hit process, and then I can save this one together. And as you can see, it combined both the process of fast pace and the demo one with me and Philip. And it also perfectly splits the shifts up. So you can do that with any number of invoices, any different format, a mix of manual or the few vendors we got working with it. If they want to save it individually, you know, just save it as is. It'll clear out the system and then they can start ringing in new ones. So however they want, it works that way. That's how the application works. Philip, you want to bring us back to the presentation?
Absolutely. All right. So some of the difficult things working on this project were on the analysis end. Again, like I had mentioned, dealing with such a limited window into their systems, it's understandable that a large healthcare provider can have students kind of running around in their system and just digging through whatever they want. So having a limited access made it kind of difficult to link things together and figure out what goes where, or fill in some of those gaps to where something wasn't tracked in this part of the system, but I'm pretty sure it is tracked in another part of the system. So without trying to get, 100 gigabytes of downloads from them, I had to work with what we could. I also learned a lot more about what it is that it takes to run and operate one of these facilities, and how many transactions actually happen within a day, a month, or just a very short amount of time. But overall, it was very rewarding to make sense of the data that was provided to us, and it offered great insight to them to try to keep track of certain items, highlight certain things, be able to make better sense of what's going on, and maybe bring that stress level down a little bit, that everything's not disappearing out the back door, but there are a few items that we kind of got to keep an eye on. And just being able to reach out into the community and kind of show off what WCTC has to offer as far as their students and the education that they've learned. It's truly a privilege and an honor to be able to give back to the community and show off some of those skills.
Yeah. Awesome job, Philip. Some of the feedback I had with it was not really in any particular order with the presentation here, but one of my favorite parts working with this project was kind of actually the programming for it. Before going to WCTC, a lot of my background in IT was with programming, making small little applications, little games here and there in high school. That was what a lot of my background was, and it wasn't until being a part of the Dual Enrollment Academy where I realized that data and analytics was actually kind of my calling there. So it was really cool being able to take like my past history and then combining it with what I've been learning here at WCTC into a really well functioning application. During this project, Philip knows we had to learn a lot of new things when it comes to Python. One of our biggest headaches in the beginning was the fact that they're scanned PDFs and not actually like text. Because originally we were going in thinking they were text, so we spent a week trying to throw together something and nothing worked. So we had to take an entire completely new approach to it, which luckily does work for mostly. Besides just having to relearn Python, there's a lot of new libraries we had to learn in order to get it to function. Tesseract was a big one. It's a Google program that reads PDFs that are images, so it's exactly what we needed. So we just incorporated that in with our application in order to actually, scan the PDFs. Philip did a great job with the loading progress. We have a little threading going on there where it runs 2 lines of code at the same time, pretty much to summarize it. And then we also had to tackle some UI in order to actually make the application. That was new for both of us. And then when calculating out a lot of the columns, had to handle a lot of datetime features that Python isn't the greatest with. So that was a bit of a headache. I think the worst part of it all was if anyone's a programmer, regex strings. You know, I'd be getting a lot of groans right now if it wasn't just me and Philip presenting. But they stand for regular expression. It's a heading in programming, but essentially it's used to find specific patterns in strings. And that's how we were able to pull the information actually from the PDFs in a way. So it would scan the image into a big block of text, and then I'd use the regex strings in order to find those specific blocks in that entire paragraph. Otherwise, it was a really great experience. I personally thought it was really cool that we were one of the few groups, if ever, I think Nikki said, to work with an outside vendor with this. It was really great being able to work with Sarah, being able to get being able to actually work with the business was cool, because it really felt like I was at a job during this whole capstone.
Well, this would be where we let Sarah talk about her experience, but she opened with that, which was amazing and very flattering. So unless Sarah, if you have anything else to add to the story.
Just going into this, granted, you know, this was our first time working with you guys as a capstone project, and not knowing exactly what we were going into, but knowing that my coworker Ina and I don't have enough hours in the day to do everything that we need to do, and that they just saved us a lot of time and research, and it was a very positive experience with the weekly calls and, you know, going through all the information. We would gladly do it again and consider other students or future students for other projects or possible internships and things like that. So it was a very positive experience, and we had a win-win situation because we were able to get things done on our end that we've been on our to-do list for a long time, and it was able to help Philip and Trayden learn new things and have some real-world experience. So it was nice.
Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
All right. Any questions?
Hi, Corey here, alumni from WCTC. I was just curious if VMP is able to import PDFs from any new vendors, or if each vendor invoice is its own module and would have to be further created for any new vendors.
So to answer that is unfortunately no. A lot of the invoices were picky in how they are formatted, so it is pretty unique for each vendor. Our solution to that was the manual template. So if they ever get any new vendors in, and they don't have access to us or other students to add in new modules to it, they can easily just put in some of the information and it'll still calculate out some of the values and split the shifts up for them. So that was our kind of solution to future-proofing this application if we're never able to get our hands back on it again.
The coding is left open in block forms to where if you needed to add in the future, if they came back, like say they had, we kind of gave them a better idea of what types of PDFs it can actually successfully read or go after. Some of them that it's hard to describe, but all the numbers, everything was all over, and it was very complicated in pulling some of it out image wise. And if they came back with any of the other ones for a future capstone project, they would be able to build those blocks of code and pretty much just plop it in and add a few lines to add it to the drop downs, and everything should work with a little bug fixing.
Very nice, thank you.
I'd like to just thank Sarah, sort of generally on behalf of WCTC for giving us this opportunity and giving our students this opportunity. This kind of, I mean, you trusted us a lot to do this, and I'm glad that it's been a positive experience both from a project perspective, but also in saving you time and helping you maybe with some losses that will get tightened up. Because this, it's so important to us for our students to have real experiences. And sometimes the data projects are harder for us to do because they're often much more time boxed. And so we're always looking for new data projects. And I know Nikki was extremely excited when this came through. And I see Kate's on the call too. Kate, thank you for helping us get through this, sort of making sure that everyone was properly aligned and protected in all ways. But this is really, really cool work. I can see how much that this is going to save you guys time. Hands off, hats off. Oh boy. Hats off to the students. And again, thank you for your trust. And we'll hope to work with you guys again on a future project.
You're very welcome. It was good. I agree. It was a success.
Awesome. Any more questions for this team? All right. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you,
Yeah,
everybody.
thank you.
At this point, we're going to take a short intermission. So it's 7:38. We're going to resume at 7:45 with our VehicleVault group next.
Sure. Let's share my screen here. Cool. That's fun. I share it and everything moves. Okay. Can everyone see my screen?
Yep.
Yep.
Perfect. All right. Well, greetings, everyone. I'm Chris Moldenauer, and I'd like to introduce our Capstone project, VehicleVault. It's a brand new full stack vehicle management application. Jake will discuss a little bit more later about the details about what went on in the application, but I just wanted to introduce the primary function that it preserved right away. So to get started, I'd like to introduce our development team. If I can hit the next one. Sorry. All right. So, like I said, my name is Chris Moldenauer. I'm a web and software development student here, and I'm graduating on Saturday, thankfully. It was my privilege to undertake the role of Scrum Master for this project. I kind of just my duty to keep everyone on track and in line while following the best agile methodologies. We also try to keep in close contact with our product owners. Additionally, as the most experienced developer on the team, I quickly became the system architect. So after collecting system requirements and carefully planning, I scaffolded the project and configured everything. So we have a functional starting point, and I helped everyone noodle everything together as they kept going. Elijah?
Hello, I'm Elijah Schultz. I was the backend developer for VehicleVault. I helped assist, or I co-created the database with Chris Moldenauer, and I wrote the API, which calls the data back to the front end. I am also going to graduate on Saturday.
I am Jake Whitmore. I am graduating WCTC in August. I was the main front-end developer and created the wireframes for the rough draft of the project. The project was a vast learning experience for me, and it taught me many different skills and assets I can use in a work environment.
Fantastic. Thanks for meeting us. So for this project, we kind of had the privilege to work with Kate from Risk Management, who is on the chat today. Fantastic. And Mark, the Associate Dean of Graphics, Transportation, and Construction, as our product owners. They were hugely inspirational in helping us kind of move this project forward and what we needed to when we were gathering requirements. So on to the main portion of our presentation. Elijah?
Oh, sorry, sorry. First, we'll start off with the application of what we needed to build. With that, we begin with why VehicleVault. VehicleVault was built to allow for the management of WCTC's vehicles. It will allow users to more easily look up the information of vehicles and manage the vehicles that WCTC has. So why are we building this application? Because originally the vehicles of WCTC were managed via extensive spreadsheets. If you look here, we can see the spreadsheets that were previously used and currently used to manage the vehicles at WCTC. There are over 255 vehicles that are active at WCTC, with more than that who were previously active at WCTC who are now considered deleted. To store we were going to develop an application to store and categorize all this information.
As far as what the project is capable of doing, it is capable of adding vehicles to a database, viewing every vehicle in the database, viewing the details of the vehicle, such as the VIN, license plate, department, year, make, model, etc. And this project is also capable of viewing and managing users and roles in an intuitive way. All the data in this database is stored in one location, which makes it easy to manage and access. As for the value, this allows for a quick addition and modification of vehicles. It's better and quicker because it is much more efficient to manage a collection of vehicles on a website than it is to do it on a crowded spreadsheet like Elijah was touching on earlier. This application also allows admins to manage the users of the website, which entails creating and managing roles and users. All the vehicles in this database is easy to read and in a manageable place. And changes can be made easily because of the structure of the website is very adaptable to different circumstances. As for the idea, we will be talking about the project design, wireframes, database, and API. So here are the wireframes. It's a very rough draft of the idea of the project, and it just kind of lays out where everything should be, and we will demonstrate how it evolved in the demo later on.
Now on to the database. To create this project, us as programming students don't have as extensive as an experience of database development, but we did create a rather large database. This database has over 33 tables and was created to store the information of the vehicles in a very detailed fashion. We also store information that would be useful in creating new vehicles, such as vehicle makes and models, with over 100 different makes offered to be created. But to handle this database between the front end and the back end, we had to create APIs and web services. We created several APIs and web services to handle this information. One of them was to a SSO, or single sign-on system, which will allow security and sign-on with VehicleVault. We also created APIs to bring in and modify information for users and vehicles. Users and vehicles can be altered by admins and viewed by anybody. But yeah.
Perfect. So throughout this project, we kind of had various learning experiences and different thoughts about how we went on about it. We just kind of want to share those before we get into the demo. So myself, it was kind of interesting starting a new application that I had to ensure the longevity of. So developing the architecture in a way that everyone will be able to expand upon this application going forward was quite the challenge, but it was very rewarding at the same time. Doing that and starting with that, I had to get the requirements from the product owners, and we kind of needed to learn that experience the hard way. When we first started, we kind of promised a little bit more than we should have, but we did manage to change those expectations a little bit along the way and managed to deliver a reasonable product I'm quite happy with. And honestly, seeing everything that you worked so hard for to come together, kind of the best part of programming for me.
For me, the largest challenge in developing this data or developing this app was developing an environment which works today, but will also have a path to expand in the future in future groups. Like if today, like you can deliver today what is a working product, but we need it to be able to easy expansion and documentation for future groups. What I learned most with this project was how to be responsible of delivering a product, not to just myself and the product owner, but to how to deliver a product to the other developers. So we could work together and deliver something in a timely manner. And my favorite part of this project was the ability to build up a project, not just something that already had been started, but build something from the beginning to meet the needs of a client. To be the ability to discuss a client, like what is needed, and from the ground up, say we need to do this, this, and this. It's something as a programmer you rarely get to do, and you're usually working on something that's already been started. And I like that a lot.
For me, there is a lot of challenges, there's a lot of growth, and there was a lot of good parts about this project. I'd say the most challenging parts was building everything from the ground up while also trying to learn technologies that I have little to no experience with. There's a lot of growth as well, and some of those were learning new technologies and how to manage time constraints and just kind of finding the time to work on everything while balancing other classes and balancing life. But then I would say some of the challenges were also some of the best parts of this project because it challenged me in ways that would make me better as a programmer. And it just allowed me to get more involved in the things that I don't know and just kind of learn new skills that I can use in the work life.
Thank you. So now we get to demo the application finally. So I have it loaded up over here, currently logged out. I'm just going to log in to demonstrate that it does work with the WCTC account. Logging in takes a little bit of time, but you know, WCTC's login always takes a little bit of time. Many thanks go out to Patrick actually for helping us with the branding for this application. Did a wonderful job on it. So when we log in, we kind of get dumped onto the main inventory page here, and we get loaded with a list of vehicles. This is pinged from the server, and just, you know, right now there's 15 vehicles in the system. We are displayed with 10. You can search for it, and when you can go through the list and you can click on a vehicle. It'll pop up with all the detail information that's currently in the system for the vehicle. You can do that with, you know, various vehicles. You can go through and add a vehicle, and it's a big form, but there's only a couple fields that are actually required. And there's a lot of validation that went into this form for what needs to be done, what has to go into it to make the vehicle. So pretty good the way it works. But the vehicle application would be nothing without its users. So we do have an admin portal that allows risk management to work with the users. You can add a user to it. You can edit an existing user. You can also view some audit information to view their department roles, the department they belong to, and the role they have within that department. You can also add a department role to a specific user. Yeah, and you just, you know, you can log out again. I think that about sums up the application itself. Go back to the presentation, and does anyone have any questions?
Before we go to questions, I'm going to ask if Kate or Mark would be willing to speak to their experience with the group this semester.
Sure, I'd be happy to. I'm so grateful to have the opportunity to work with some of our students, and I had a really positive experience. They were very professional. They stayed in good contact with us. They asked really relevant questions. They kept us updated on what they were working on. And I think that this has the potential to be something that not only saves time, but helps us to more effectively manage our fleet and cross-communicate amongst all the departments that have different pieces of this puzzle. So I really appreciate all the work that you guys have done. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I echo what Kate said also. Phenomenal. I'm seeing this tonight and I'm really impressed with it. The one thing too is we can take pictures of the vehicles and add pictures of the vehicle as well. So that's going to be very helpful because we've got, like you said, 255 vehicles and that inventory changes weekly or monthly as we get rid of cars and acquire vehicles and all that sort of thing. So the spreadsheets were very hard to manage because everybody had their own spreadsheet and they didn't like to share. One database that be used by multiple areas is going to be phenomenal, a phenomenal time saver for all of us. I enjoyed working with the group. Always enjoy working with the students. Very professional. We met on, I think, at least three or four Thursday nights. They had a lot of good questions and we had a lot of great discussions.
Thank you very much. We really appreciate you guys' feedback. It was wonderful working with you guys. Anybody have any questions?
I have a question.
Go ahead.
When you create this type of website, does it do any of the reporting that you have to do for the DMV at all?
This website, not yet. That was not within our scope of requirements.
Okay. I was just curious about that.
Good question.
I was going to ask how tricky it was to get the single sign-on working, and if you had any other applications, either as part of the suite of what our Capstone students cover as like a reference point or anything that you've had to do already. Because I don't teach any classes that do SSO. So I was wondering how much you saw it and how well that went.
It's a good question. It's a good question. I was actually in charge of putting together the SSO. Nikki had graciously given us a project that already had an SSO integrated in it. Unfortunately, I couldn't use most of the code within that project. I had to do a lot of research because that project had a lot of dead code in it. I didn't know what did what with no documentation. So overall, I'd say it was on a scale of 1 to 5, it was probably like a 3 difficulty to implement the SSO. Wasn't so bad. Just had to follow some documentation from Microsoft and it was fine.
Awesome. Because that's going to be such a time saver for everybody. It's
I did
really
document
a
it so
great
people
feature.
can view it now.
Nice. Good work, Chris.
Anybody else?
Also, Jake, I like that your VehicleVault image is inverted. It just adds dimension to your team. I also wanted to know when you got the mustache, because I haven't seen that as part of your physique.
Yeah, it was kind of recently. I don't know. My girlfriend said she liked it, so I just went with it.
She's a keeper. That's
Yeah.
awesome. Good work, guys.
Any other questions for this team?
I have one.
When can we use it?
We can chat about that offline, Mark.
Okay. I'm excited. I really am. It looks phenomenal. So
I am too.
Yeah, I was curious if you could go into your decision-making process on how you developed your tech stack.
Yeah. So I kind of we had a couple of options. Kind of just kicked it back and forth with Elijah and Nikki. We had some base requirements that had to be relevant and recent. So we kind of went with a .NET 8 backend because it was a strong backend component you could use, and it was also, very recent. .NET 9 is coming out soon, but not soon enough. And we went with a Vue 3 front end using a Vuetify for styling. And that was, a pretty straightforward answer because Vue is a very lightweight and easy to use framework. And Vuetify was just a good styling tool on top of it. Yeah.
Was there a reason for Vue over any of the other front ends, or is it just something that's taught at WCTC?
This is a project that's going to be continued on by other students, so we want it to be relevant to their coursework.
Yeah. Vue is taught in the JavaScript 2 class.
Okay.
So students should know. Hopefully.
Ultimately, I'm the one that ends up supporting a lot of these applications. So I've been trying to limit it to a couple of options that we already have things in that if things are truly broken or something like that, we can manage to fix versus some random tech stack that nobody's seen before.
I am in strong support of that.
Ditto, and I don't even have to support it anymore. I do have a question for the authentication piece because that's my domain right now. Where are you guys handling the integration? Did you use a view library and things are exposed in the browser, or are you handling authentication in the server layer?
All authentication happens in the server layer in the back end through an authentication controller.
I love to hear that.
Just kind of pass back and forth some non-private info using a JWT. Works out.
So are you using session cookies for storage and session management, or are you using some other paradigm?
Currently, it's just a session cookie with an expiry date on it.
Cool.
Well, if Drew's happy, everyone's happy. So I hadn't given you a hard time yet since, it's been forever since I saw you. So
I'm open for it.
Awesome. Any last questions for this team?
Great work.
Thank you guys so much, and congratulations on graduation.
Yes. Looking forward to seeing you on Saturday.
I was going to say, we'll see you all on Saturday.
Yes.
Gotta keep an eye out for you guys. Well, thank you guys all for listening. I do appreciate it. Have a wonderful night.
All right. Thank you, VehicleVault Group.
Thank
And
you.
most certainly, last but not least at all, our SLED team.
You guys see my screen share?
Yep.
All right, cool, you're on.
Okay, so this is the SLED project team. And
Okay,
our,
so I'll go. I got it.
yeah, go ahead.
So starting with our team, our main product owner was Nikki. She helped us a lot with feedback and team direction in general. I served as the Scrum Master and also took part in development as I'm a web and software development student graduating next week.
My name is Isaiah Makari. I am an IT web and software developer. I will be graduating once I get an internship, so hopefully sooner than later. And I took part in the development team.
Hi, I'm Scott Winarski. I'm also in the web and software development team, and I will also be graduating in later this week.
Hi, I'm Ku Vang. I'm also a web and software development student, and hopefully by summer I could graduate if I get my internship. With that, that concludes our introduction. So we'll go to what is SLED. So SLED is actually an acronym for Student Learning Evidence Database. The SLED project that we worked on is an application that is used by the WCTC administrators and instructors in which they evaluate course curriculums. They do this to determine whether or not some courses are in need of a revamp or are deemed unnecessary and removed to ensure student learning. Reports of evidence of student learning is then reported to the state, and this helps determine the funding that the school will receive. So why SLED?
Why we chose SLED is it was currently a work in progress across multiple semesters. We were updating it. Previous groups were also updating it into a newer version of C# .NET Core 6. It serves an essential function for faculty in that it can assess if students are meeting program outcomes, which is required for the school being maintaining their accreditation. It also gives us the opportunity as a team to showcase our adaptability, meaning we are going into an existing project, which is a lot closer to how the real world operates. And it gives us the ability to showcase the knowledge we gained in school and also the knowledge we obtained while working on this assignment. What we solved was that the program needed a new scheduling page. That was our #1 priority out of a variety of other things. And along the way, we implemented some general accessibility, some formatting issues, such as redesigning entire pages on the back end so that they flowed a lot easier, and provided improved functionality across a variety of pages, a lot of small quality of life features. Accessibility was the biggest one, however, because right now, according to the Baybird Institute in 2021, of the top 33 top grossing e-commerce sites, 94% were non-compliant. What does this apply to SLED? Well, a lot of these other sites likely caught lawsuits for violating the ADA, which is the Americans with Disabilities Act. Now, this helps out SLED because we can tackle two major problems. The first is anyone with any regards to any sort of circumstances can come in and actually navigate and use the application, with the second one being that we won't get the school really sued. So that's also very important. We all tackled accessibility features in some way, and for some of the other problems we face as a group, I will turn it over to Lucas.
Okay, so a problem we dealt with, especially at the beginning, was merging, as none of us had too much experience using GitHub as a team. The biggest single issue this caused was in the first week we did have to roll back our project because of accidental commits to the main branch. We also did have a couple times, especially early, where we would be solving merge conflicts and then go to test and just find something completely broke. Another problem we dealt with was large pages. Since the project currently doesn't use components, page sizes and indenting can get really bad. Some pages were literally like thousands of lines and sometimes hundreds of lines indented, as you can see there. This often made working with JavaScript especially frustrating, as the JavaScript was at the bottom of the page often, and if you were going to check something, you'd have to do a lot of jumping around, and it was just a hassle.
Some other challenges that we faced as a group was setting up meetings where we could all meet, seeing as we all had conflicting schedules. The days that were available was just Wednesdays and Fridays, which only gives us a day in between class before and after. So it didn't give us much time to implement changes that we discussed. To mitigate this, we used a group chat where we all constantly updated each other on issues or progress throughout the week. This was especially important for me and Isaiah because towards the end of the semester, we started working on the same page, and it was really important for us to keep in touch with our changes. These were challenges that we had as a group, but now we'll discuss the individual challenges.
Yeah, so these are the individual challenges that I personally faced during the semester, and they kind of go in chronological order according to my bullet points. So to start off with, it would be just understanding the entirety of the application, just how the application and the database work together. This application also was heavily used by MVC, Model View Controller, which is a software architectural pattern that is commonly used for developing user interfaces. So it was just a little bit of a learning curve to understand this entire application. It took a couple of weeks to study the application and all the files and the database to really grasp what I was working with. Another thing I learned was Razor. Razor is a markup syntax for creating dynamic web pages, essentially just the combination of C# and HTML markup. So it took a little time to familiarize myself with Razor syntax and to access the view model properties so I could retrieve the data from the controller methods. On top of that, I also learned a lot of backend programming this semester. Prior to the semester, I thought I knew backend programming better, but I realized I was a lot more involved with just front end, such as HTML and JavaScript. So it was great to expand my knowledge and my experience with backend programming this semester. And I was able to learn a variety of things such as link queries, working a lot with C#, understanding the database tables and relationships, and along with learning AJAX calls and HTTP requests, which are two techniques to send data to the server so you can dynamically update the page. On top of that, I also improved my debugging and JavaScript skills thanks to Patrick. He specializes in this area, so he showed us how to properly and effectively debug. Specifically backend, we all didn't really know how to debug very well backend programming. So he was a great help in that area, as well with just showing us how to efficiently and effectively write good JavaScript code. On top of that, I would just like to mention my favorite thing I learned this semester would be just all the backend programming I learned. It was great to just expand my knowledge in that area, and it was very satisfying to finally make that record to the database. So just pulling all the things together, such as creating the method, sending the data to the method, and then finally displaying that record on the DOM was just the cherry on top of all things. I also really liked working in a Scrum environment. That was definitely also a great thing. So those were the challenges that I faced this semester, and now we will turn to Scott to see the challenges he overcame.
Hi, the major challenge that I would encounter first was I had to basically relearn JavaScript after spending so much time with C#. Now, JavaScript by itself is a very fun language because it largely plays by its own rules. That also deviated a little bit into an outdated jQuery library, which kind of compounded the problems I was facing until we updated it. And then going into the solving complicated bugs. Now, the combination of those two previous things made the solving of bugs a lot harder. And I got to experience what it's like being in the professional environment in which you will do nothing but bug fix for quite some time. I think I spent at least 3 weeks overall just trying to figure out why certain things weren't working. And it was largely because of some JavaScript bug that I had to find out along the way. Now, making the application more accessible, that was a challenge, not in the sense that it was very difficult to do, but because it was more tedious. I was using a screen reader, or Windows Navigator, to basically go over all of the pages and try to absorb what was being shown without actually being able to use my eyes. So that also helped me make the pages overall more accessible because I actually had to effectively see them the way someone with a screen reader would perceive them. Those are a lot of the challenges that I faced, and I will turn it over to Lucas.
Okay, so starting out with my favorite part about working this project was just adding in JavaScript functionality in general. Found it satisfying. I was rusty at it, but I spent so much time doing it that I'm a lot more confident as a result. I also spent a lot of time working on the back end and improved there too. And this is really good for me since I have personal projects I work on using the same framework. And after working on this project, I see like so many ways I can improve it. So then going to the main thing I struggled on specifically was kind of like I think Isaiah said, troubleshooting backend issues. It was just a hard thing for me. I found it hard to even find and then understand what the issues were, especially compared to front-end troubleshooting. So I had to get help with Patrick on it a lot. And then that's it for mine. So moving on to Coos.
Similar to Isaiah's challenges with Razor Pages, I was pretty unfamiliar with it. So before I could even start looking at the project, I needed to learn the syntax and how to utilize the models and the views before I could get any work done. A lot of the queries that was required to get the correct data were pretty lengthy, as you can see in the photo. That's just one example, but all the data that was required were really interconnected with the various tables within the database. So there's a lot of jumping back and forth to get the correct data that I want and need to display. Other than that, I actually kind of took charge on working on the bigger component of the project, which was the scheduling page. And it was pretty much blank because the old system didn't support it anymore, I believe. And so they did provide a wireframe, but even with the wireframe, it was a bit hard to understand what exactly was needed in terms of data and functionality. So I worked pretty closely with Nikki to kind of clarify the wireframe and any functionality that she wanted with it. I think the most challenging and satisfying part for me was getting the modal to open up and learning the different functionalities of a modal that we could place into it, and also its limitations. Um, and I guess seeing it all work how I imagined it would be. But other than that, I guess that pretty much wraps up my experience, and we could move on to our demos of important parts that we changed.
Just wait for the login here. Okay, so since this is a very big website and we made improvements all over the pages, we're just going to show a couple of the cool ones here, and we're going to start with the new enrollments functionality. So essentially now you can either upload students individually using the ID like he's going to show here, and you can add them to a list. But use the autofill one. Give it plus. Yep, there you go. And then it'll work. There's also error handling on that, as you saw. And then this is the better one where you can now bulk enroll from a file. This is an example of what happens if you have one that has errors. It'll automatically handle them and allow you to fix them and revalidate essentially until the errors are gone. And he's going to show you here. Yep, and then you can just enroll them.
And to add to that, we also show the scheduling page that Ku was talking about. That was probably the biggest component that we had to, the biggest item that we had to do for the product owner. So I will show you that you can select through semesters, and you can add to a schedule to these semesters. These are all the courses that are currently in this semester. So we will choose to add a schedule. You choose the course you want to add, and then you can choose all the outcomes that you'd like to have for that course. To do that, you can go to set dates. You have these fields that are just integers. These are when the assessment opens and closes according to the section end date. Once you do that, this will correspond to show like when these outcomes can be assessed according to the section date. Now that we added that, it shows the two CRNs that we added. Some other functionality, these are a few of the outcomes that I chose. You can see all of them. This is the submission range. This is when that assessment opened and when it closes for the outcome. You can also change these dates to whatever you'd like. We have this gold icon to show that changes are pending. Once you click that, it will give you some styling to show that it has been changed, and that will update the database. And there's just more functionality here, like deleting one outcome. And then there's also a way you can delete all the outcomes, such as like here's two, and I can delete all these outcomes from this assessment. And essentially, that assessment will then disappear. And we just have this one last assessment left. So that is a good chunk of what we work on for the scheduling page. And that is the end of our demonstration as well as our presentation. And we will take whatever questions you guys have.
So I'm going to jump in. I've been the product owner on this application for many years, since the original one. 6 years, is that what it was, Drew? Yeah, 6-ish years. This was another one that we started when Drew was still here. So the current version of it is built in the old version of .NET, the .NET framework, not .NET Core, whatever it's called now. But we've been working on rebuilding it, enhancing it as the requirements have changed, and bringing it into the new version of .NET for a couple semesters now. And this group is probably by far the most interactive one I've worked with, which has been awesome. So as they went through the Scrum process, they had the idea to make a column on their backlog that was for me to test. So as each sprint finished, I'd go in, I'd pull down their code, I'd go through the backlog, and anything that was tagged for me to test, I would go through and say, yeah, this works exactly the way I wanted to. No, there's a problem. Can you adjust the text? All those types of feedback items that typically happen. And then they also were very good about asking me questions to understand exactly what was required, which hasn't been the case in a lot of groups that we've had in the past. So team, I really appreciate how interactive and how responsive you were with your questions and involving me in the process this semester. It was great to work with you on this project.
Thank you, Nikki. It was great to work with you too.
Any questions for this team?
I don't have a.
Oh, go ahead.
I don't have a question, just a comment. I've been working with SLED for the last 4 years, and this is just incredible. What a great job. I'm really looking forward to being able to use this in the future. So thank you guys.
Yeah, I kind of want to piggyback on that. I'm one of the administrators of SLED. I use it regularly, schedule assessments for faculty, and then troubleshoot them on the back end or call Nikki. And I really appreciate all the work that you've put into it. I also really liked kind of hearing you guys talk about, making it accessible. I think that that's, we always want our tools at the college to be accessible. But with this being a faculty facing, I think that that's, that is just as important. And so I like that you guys worked through that and kind of tackled that piece along with the other pieces. I always appreciate how hard group projects can be. And it sounds like you guys really had some good communication and worked through challenges. So good job.
Thank you.
I noticed that several members of the team also that they had to ramp up on learning Razor. And I was wondering if that's something that you've all seen before, maybe once or twice in classes and then never again, or if just one rogue student decided to throw it all in the application and now you all just have to deal with it every semester, and if it should be maybe something that's refactored with different technology that the students know. It's just a question.
I think we'd seen it, but it'd been a while. That was for me.
Okay.
I think this is the first time I worked with Razor.
Yeah,
I think
that's
we
the
didn't do it
same
in
case
Jeff's
for me.
class. I feel like we might have in Jeff's class, at least briefly.
I've been told that you do it in Jeff's class.
Yeah, I remember a little bit. My memory's skewed though, because
Yeah.
I've used it on the side, so
maybe.
So Brittany, make a note as we look at the reframe of everything.
Sure.
You too, Patrick. All right, make a note.
I would highly advocate for the pattern this group is using in more of like the backend for front end, where the JavaScript is served up and using the backend as more of an API layer. That's a really, really common and scalable industry pattern that I'm seeing in more and more places, and it gets out of the Razor full page refresh view, which is where more and more people are going. So that's a great question, Brittany.
Any other questions for this group?
I think my favorite thing, Nikki, is that if I remember the numbers right, this saved the college like $100,000 a year or something.
Something like that.
Or
Yeah.
something like that. So
Yeah.
students, did you know that you guys are having real impact? So I don't know if you knew that number, but that's both with this and the HIT project and the vehicle management, like you guys are impacting the college and making it better. So kudos to y'all for the hard work you put in.
thank you.
Yeah. Drew was an instructor here a number of years ago, for those of you that don't know him. And Drew kind of came up with the idea to start IS Project down this path. Oh, what, 2017-ish, something like that. And then when Drew left, I kind of took over. I picked up the baton and I kept running with it. And so you can blame Drew and I for where we're at.
You're welcome.
And I keep rotating different instructors in for Nikki to break in so that they all know what's at the end goal. So I even took I took my turn at it too. So
And Scott, it's nice to see you smiling. I think I had you in a
Yes.
lot of the intro
I don't
courses and you were
smile?
like angry, like a lot. Like it's
Angry?
not working. And why is it not working? So I
That
love
that
that
should
you've made it all the way to
that's
the
just how my face is. I don't know what to say.
I was gonna say too, Scott, like you have a lot more confidence
Mhm.
here as you're finishing this. I mean, I remember walking you around the career fair in fall.
Yeah, it was pretty scary.
And here, look at this.
Good work, everyone.
Yep.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, SLED team. And thank you everyone for attending. Do we have any final questions or feedback anybody would like to say before we wrap up?
I'm gonna pop in like I always do. Really nice work, you guys. I know how much work goes into this. I know what a struggle it can be sometimes. You know, Drew talked about the brownfield development. That's going to be a good portion of what you're doing. And so having the experience of coming in, trying to figure out what on earth were they thinking, right? As you are trying to uncover some of the code and trying to work with it is huge. But, you know, the growth that you get across this class, you know, is just, it's unbelievable for us to be able to watch. It's really cool to see. And you've done tremendous work, and this is absolutely something you should be talking about in your interviews, because these are real production tools, or they're tools that are about to be in production or be in production soon. And as Drew mentioned, they're saving this organization money. And that's not an insignificant thing to be able to say. I worked on an application that saved WCTC $100,000, right? Or this or that, to be able to put those in, to be able to really have that experience. That's what's setting you apart from the people in other schools that don't have this opportunity. So really nice job. I know it's hard to get and do these presentations. Those of you who missed it, Dr. Barnhouse was in here, our president, for 2 of the presentations before he had to bounce. So, you know, there is interest in what you're doing at all levels of this organization. So excellent, excellent job.
Nikki, if I can just also say, yeah, congratulations to all of you on completing your capstone. I mean, your hard work, dedication, and creativity really shone through tonight, and you've made us all really proud. So thank you all. Great job. And a special thank you to Nikki and Patrick for your guidance and support to our students. Really, thank you both. Thank you to all the instructors too.
Thanks, Andrea.
And thanks for all of our guests. Sometimes, you know, Nikki and I are like, who can we get to come? And we're so excited to see alums show up. We'll call you an alum instructor, Drew, you know, to see people throughout the college come. I think this is one of the best turnouts I've seen in a while. So really so glad to have you all here. Your input, especially those of you from industry, is tremendous for our students to hear. So thank you for giving up some hours of your evening, especially on what eventually turned out to be a gorgeous night. So
thank you for inviting us.
Absolutely. Thanks for coming.
Look for future invites.
Yes.
Yes, we've had many, as Max McCoy from Lanix, we've had many WCTC graduates find happy homes at Lanix. And I mean, Allie, you're exactly right. You just see all the things we're seeing tonight with these projects. It's absolutely stuff you encounter in the workforce when it comes to, you know, good engineering, good design, good code discipline, good project management and communication is critical. It's just amazing to see how the curriculum captures all that. And, you know, we've certainly seen that with students that have come on board the team. They're ready for it and equipped for it. So I would absolutely echo that in your interviews with prospective employers. Bring this up, bring up the value that you provide to WCTC. And thank you again.
Thank you, Max. All right. So I guess that finishes up our capstone presentations. You guys, you're done. Students, please stick around for just a few minutes. Patrick and I have just a few more things for you. If anybody has any other questions, feel free to stay on the call. Otherwise, have a great evening, and we really appreciate you coming out tonight.
Congrats, everyone. Thank you.
Yep.
Thanks so much.
Congrats. Great work. Bye.
So proud of you all. Good job. I've been awake since 5 this morning, but I could not miss the capstone presentations because I got to see my babies shine. So you guys are doing great.
Thanks, Brittany.
And
see many of you at graduation on
Yes. See you Saturday.
Thanks,
Everyone.